Hi guys, this is my first vlog. I've got the blog, I've got the vlog, I've got now a vlog. And I've already posted for 2 weeks, so I'm a little bit behind for the vlog, but I was more focused on getting everything up and running and going perfectly and before I wanted to do the vlogs. And the vlogs will come more regularly now with timing it the same week as the blog itself and the vlog. But so this is vlog number 1. I'm super excited. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about me. And I'm also going to talk about Dogwood and how Dogwood came. And my blog is titled Reflections of a Life of Rebirth, because that's what dogwoods are. Dogwoods represent rebirth. And my first blog is entitled Reflections of a 40-Year-Old Idiot Genius. Well, for 39 years, I've always been a woman in search of her word. Everything I have ever been has always been wrapped up in someone or something else. And now I'm forced to start over again at 40 years old after some recent events. Admittedly, it's the last thing that I want to do. I've had to do it numerous times in my life. But I think a change will do me good. Sometimes we're forced into directions that we ought to have found for ourselves. And I have, although experienced a lot of things in my life, and we'll talk about those as we spend more time together, I have learned that living in a victim mentality, you can't learn anything. So I take my punches with a stiff upper lip. Anybody will tell you that's pretty true. And I move on. So turning 40, there were some big reflections that were starting to happen in my life, and God was speaking to me. God has been speaking to me for a long time about getting more out there with my writing and my speaking that I had started. But the idea of being the main coming attraction, I thought was a little off, mainly because who would want to come see me? It didn't really matter to me that God was the focus and that what I had to say was God-breathed and pretty good. But I didn't like the idea of being the center of attention at all, ever. I seem to find myself in situations I'm not even sure how, where I am the center of attention, but I don't like it. It's not fun. And so I'd been pushing against God and pushing against obedience for a really long time. And right before I turned 40, God hit me again, and I had to have a stiff upper lip. And God said, it's time. Stop being disobedient. And so I had to listen. After what happened, I realized that ruin is a gift. In fact, ruin is the road to transformation. And some flowers spread their seed when they're trampled. I don't want to be miserable, and I don't want to live in ruins, afraid to change. I think sometimes people can either take 2 different tracks when bad things happen or things they don't want to feel. You can either get stuck in a rut of feeling them too much, or you can make a choice to not feel them at all. And I think that's the more popular opinion. Here's why. We live in a world with a ton of mediums that can take our attention very quickly. Phones, TVs, computers. There's a bunch of things out there that make it easy for us to not have to feel anything. So when something bad happens, we just choose to play a game on our phone or find the next Mrs. Whoever on the next dating site, because all we have to do is swipe right or left. We don't have to actually feel what happened in that last relationship to make whatever broke apart to break. Or you don't have to feel and learn whatever caused, so that you become more of who God wants you to be. Remember, your life is more about refining. It's the idea that iron sharpens iron. It's the idea that you're transforming into a person that God has designed you to be. You're not here just to take up air or space. So, I have found myself, I'm a little bit of the middle road. I believe in feeling feelings. I know that sounds dumb, but that's the truth. I find myself when stuff happens in my life that I overthink it and I feel it almost until my fingers get pruny. And I don't like being miserable. It's actually very torturous for me. But the more that I feel it, the faster through the process I go. And then I can be distracted pretty easily as well. So it's kind of a matter on the given day and sometimes the given minute on which way I'm going to go. Now, so many times I've been cut out of people's lives like pieces of paper. I've learned that you have to be prepared in life for endless waves of transformation. And when you're cut out like that from people's lives, you start to believe that you're the problem. I'm very mathematical. We'll learn this more as I talk today and more as I talk throughout the coming weeks. I function in a world where mathematics and the equations that come along with it, reason is where I feel the most comfortable. I like a world that's simply ordered. And so in that, when you've been cut out of people's lives so many times, you start to look for the common denominator. Remember, I like math. And if the common denominator is me, I began to think that maybe it was me. I was the problem. I was impossible to love. So, with that, you also have to believe after a certain period of time that when people put you down enough, you start to believe it. And no matter when wonderful people come into your life and say, that's not true, the bad stuff is easier to believe. But a few months ago, when I realized that my life was slipping out from underneath me, kind of like you do when you slip on a banana peel, I realized that I'm just tired of living life in a way that I wake up each morning and I recall every single thing that happened the day before, trying to figure out how much self-loathing to take into the shower. Understand, I have no interest in being immoral or unethical. I'm just done with the guilt. I have learned that yes, quite often I'm rejected by others, but I'm not rejected by my Messiah. Life is about doing the work. And if you want to get to the castle, you're going to have to swim the moat. So a few months ago, I decided, how am I going to do this? So every day, I choose to select my thoughts, kind of like I'm selecting an outfit. I'm much better at selecting my thoughts than my outfit, by the way. And I've learned that what we do does not define who we are. What defines us is how well we rise after falling. I've also learned that I can't measure my holiness based on other people's sins. And I'm not going to worry about who other men think are important. A little bit about me. I like to Forrest Gump it down. That's one of my favorite sayings, actually. I love that movie. One of the reasons I love it is because Forrest Gump is a projection of a person, and the way he thinks is a one that I try to emulate. It's a simpler way of thinking. You strip out all of the other noise, all of the other complexities that get piled on like pieces of cheese on a piece of sandwich, and you pull all of that off just to get to the meat. It's a much simpler way of thinking. And I like that. Now, understand, simple and easy are two very different things. I'm not saying that my life is easy. I just try to keep it simple. Most people would describe me, and I would describe myself, as that I'm a fool with a brain that has taken her far. I have an unwavering knack for accuracy, a compulsion for the truth, and I do not believe luck exists. I don't believe in yelling. I believe if you have to yell, you need to improve your argument. I believe wholeheartedly in servant leadership, but be prepared, because to serve people takes dignity, intelligence, and a humble spirit. Because my brain works perfectly imperfect, change is difficult for me, more so than most. Some would call me a scholar because, again, I function in a world where mathematical efficiency is very much desired. A world that is, again, simply ordered. However, I've learned that life is a lot about mystery. And mysteries aren't very easy for a scholar. Most times, though, life is living out and acting out faith, not reason. I thank God for fear, because then the only way to heal is to trust. With my brain only being brilliant in the area of reason, relationships have been a struggle. Yeah, I'm gonna get real. Emotionally, I'm an idiot. Admittedly, I want the fairy tale like every girl does, but I live much of the time in the state of confusion when it comes to feelings, which, by the way, doesn't make me very sexy or desirable to men when you aren't really sure what's going on emotionally most of the time. Also, my brain requires balance. Remember, I don't like change. So I try to live a balanced life now. And I think you should too, because in that you find who you are. But my best advice to you is to not end good things in your life, like love, because you don't think you can keep your balance. To lose your balance for love is part of living a balanced life. Therefore, I don't need a man. I need a champion. So, the most unforgettable moment for me has happened recently. It was life-changing because in a 2-hour car ride, I went from believing one thing in my life, believing I was on one trajectory of my life, to I was flying high, and I really just thought I knew what was coming. But 2 hours later, that trajectory crashed. And I was basically told, thanks, but no thanks. I knew my life would never be the same. I remember thinking in that moment that who I was leading up to that was going to be different than who I was going forward. And that's when Dogwood was born. The reason I was different was going to be different because the lesson that I needed to learn in that moment was something that I had wished I had learned earlier. And I also knew several things were true. One of them was that I was going to need to let go of the control that I felt so good about having. I'm a scholar. I have brilliance in business and in reason, that most would argue, some of my closest friends and confidants would tell you it is rivaled by many, many large companies, the way my brain works. And in that, I saw myself like being very good at problem solving. And my brilliance and reason had taken me quite far. And I felt very good about that. I thought that was a good thing. But in that 2 hours, I realized that who I was up to that point was not who God wanted me to be. That the control that I felt so good about having was completely wrong. I realized that God's purpose for my life and the will that He had for me to do for Him, I needed to live inside of that. And I needed to be content with whatever that looked like. That meant if I gave up my career, the love of my life, anything that I was hanging on to or being tossed out of, that maybe wasn't God's. I needed to figure out what His will for my life was and learn to be content in that. And learn through that process that I needed to be perfectly content that if God doesn't have something for me that I thought I wanted, I need to embrace it and realize that God knows best and God gets control. So I started all over. I started getting on my knees every day and saying, Lord, what's my task for today? And I knew that in this pause of my life, that God was going to give me my instructions for that day. And for that day, He was going to give me the strength that I needed for that day to get through it. And my job was to do that task at the very best that I could do them. And at the end of the day, I hand it back over to Him and pray that He says to me, good job, my faithful servant, and release it. That was it. The transaction was over. And I needed to be okay with whatever He did, with whatever I presented with Him to Him, was up to Him. The miracle belongs to God, not to me. The results belong to God, not to me. All I'm there to do is the task that He gave me. And I need to do it to the very best of my ability and be prepared that whatever He does with it, whatever the results are, I need to accept. It's joy regardless of happiness, hope regardless of circumstance. It's contentment regardless of the situation you're in. And knowing that God, the way He loves us, is so overwhelming and so perfected that He knows what is best, not us. So that's what I do now. That's how I live. The biggest lesson is sometimes you have to learn to die to live again. So I know, you guys are wondering, I keep talking about having a word now that I have turned 40. God's given me a word for my life going forward. And I'll talk about that in my second vlog. So stay tuned. But remember, love doesn't change.